Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Onchain India podcast, where we are celebrating entrepreneurs. Today, we have with us Azeem from Morph, who's built some amazing, exceptional stuff, and we're here to get inspired from Azeem, Morph, and his journey. A bit context about them. Morph is a global consumer level that is building or inviting applications that can be used for everyday users. From the tech perspective, they leveraging a hybrid scaling solutions, which includes both optimistic and ZK rollups. In their fundraising journey, they have raised, I think, close to around $25 million with likes of Dragonfly, Pantera, Foresight Ventures, and some big names in the VC industry. Let's deep dive a bit more into Morph and Azeem. Azeem, welcome to the Onchain India podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure. I know we've been chatting about doing this for a few weeks, so I'm glad that we finally were able to make the schedules work for it.
Awesome. Azim, so let's kickstart quickly about your background, your journey into the Web3 part. Would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, I'll actually take it back a little bit. So, as the child of Pakistani immigrants in the United States, the expectation of a Desi kid would be to go to medical school. And I actually have degrees in biology and then a master's in advanced biology and a master's thesis in genomics that I did at Harvard Medical School. And I was actually applying to medical school. And so between 2012 and 2013 was when I discovered crypto. And it was because I was working at a biotech company and I was waiting to hear back from how medical schools would go. And I even got into medical school, but it was the time where I was sitting on Twitter and learning about, what is decentralized money, monetary theory, the philosophy of how we ascribe value to money, and just things that a lot of Bitcoiners were talking about at the time. And I started writing for the Huffington Post in the middle of 2013. I'd run the Boston Marathon with the attacks, and I submitted an article about it to them, and it got published. And they were able to give me a contributor section approval, so I was able to write about anything I wanted. And I met the people starting the NYC Bitcoin Center here in the financial district in New York. I'm based in New York. I have been for my whole life. And I went to their party. This was back when Bitcoin was trading at like $500 or $600. Today, I think we're getting close to hitting the 100K, right? But so like very long time ago. And met with all of the people that were there. It was a New Year's Eve party. Everyone was getting wasted. And I was just doing people watching, looking and being like, I've only sort of been reading about this. This is my first like event in crypto. And just looking at these people who were buying and selling Dogecoin and Bitcoin to each other like it was a stock market, yelling and using QR codes. I was like, these people are eccentric and eclectic enough that this industry is going nowhere. And, fast forward from then, I have done a variety of things in this space. I tried launching something called Kimcoin Dashing in early 2014 and got a cease and desist that didn't allow me to do it. 2017, I was part of all the ICO stuff that was going on, where just buying and selling, nothing serious. In 2019, I got laughed at for trying to raise money for a crypto gaming company. Every major investor said crypto and gaming don't go together. 2020, I was at a mobile game that was very much the precursor to what Stephen became. So like Pokemon Go for sneakerheads. And it was something that made me feel strongly enough about needing to get back into crypto that in 2021 I started a crypto crowdfunding platform built on Ethereum. We launched that in 2021, and just the everything that comes with being in a bull market and like the constant noise was something where I was like, I actually need to step away from this, and ended up at Gitcoin DAO, raising money for the Gitcoin grants program. Did that for almost 2 years, where I ended up leading BD sales and partnerships for the whole DAO across a variety of things. And now leading into where I'm at now, it's been about a year that I've been at Morph. We're an EVM layer 2 that is now live on mainnet. We did a seed round earlier this year that we announced in March, I believe. And yeah, now, getting towards being one of the many L2s that are out, but doing what we believe will allow us to outcompete the market and being able to be successful in that.
Amazing. I really like the transition, Azim. Coming from a biomedical standpoint, and
Mhm.
going into the depths of cryptography and the new age, sort of internet. I don't know, but do you have like different perspectives, to look at a problem statement, given the experience in the medical thing?
I think one of the things, it's funny because I've had family members say, like, oh, to add some more doing तुमने तो ये सब time और पैसे जाया किए for like going to get these degrees that you're not using. You wasted your time. And actually, the way that I see it is that when you have a STEM degree, and I don't have an engineering degree, but a STEM as a whole is it creates this idea where you learn to be able to approach problems from multiple ways, and you're able to generate hypotheses and then be able to create experiments to test against them. And even just the idea of the amount of rote memorization you need to do and studying you have to do and the hours that you have to put in to be able to do experiments that usually go nowhere have all been things, honestly, that have played out in ways where I think it's been super helpful. Like, I'm a columnist with CoinDesk at the moment, and I'm a contributor with Forbes as well. And a lot of my writing, I really feel, comes from being able to take a look at things, deeply understand them, and then be able to sort of regurgitate them in a way that is just simpler and use it like there's less verbiage and less BS in what I'm saying. And I think a lot of that comes from having studied biology and having to take these really difficult concepts and terms and be able to then put it out in a way that like made sense, was easy to understand. I could explain it to someone else. So despite, having the set of degrees that I'm actively not using, I think that it still helps me a lot today. And also, in the last few weeks, there was a photo at DevCon where CZ and Vitalik were at a decentralized science meetup. I am very excited about actually being able to understand what's going on in the decentralized science space from a real perspective. And actually, when I was at Gitcoin, I led what I believe is still the largest grant round to date in decentralized science, where we distributed close to $750,000, I believe, to around 100 projects. And so, even though those degrees didn't go into immediate use by me becoming a physician, I do still see that they were completely not wasted.
Got it. Azim, let's deep dive more into the Morph part of it, right? I
Sure.
mean, as a founder, and I mean, you had some set of experience before, like building and pitching out, to different people. What was the mental model? Because specifically for early stage founders, when they are yet to select the idea, you always have those two, three concepts where you feel, hey, this might work, or probably idea two is way much cooler or has
Mhm.
like a larger market share. So what was the mental model, for you to choose that, hey, you know what, Morph is the one that I want to go and build this great project?
It's funny. I actually had Morph introduced to me. It was an incubated project at BitGet originally. And I'd been working with the BitGet, their very large exchange. I'd been working with them on a variety of things and am still actually currently a venture partner at their venture fund, Foresight Ventures. And we started working together in mid 2022 when I helped co lead a treasury diversification round at Gitcoin. So we raised $9 million. And the point of the raise was that the token price for Gitcoin was going towards zero. And we needed to make sure that did it actually go to zero, we would be in a position to actually still pay the contributors for some period of time before things would actually potentially recover. And so Protocol Labs and OKX co-led that round. And I had brought in a lot of the Asian funds as a whole. I'd been chatting with everyone. I had brought in OKX and worked closely with that team. Still very big fan of them now. Foresight Ventures joined that round. IOSG joined that round. And it was me getting really more entrenched into what's going on in crypto in the East. And then Q2 of 2023, I became a venture partner with them. And so in September of last year, I was approached by the team and they said, look, we've been incubating this idea. We don't want to keep it as an internal idea. We've worked with you, we know you, we trust you. You bring a different blend and flavor to Western markets than we do in the Eastern markets. Would you be opposed to coming on as a founder for this? And understanding that it would require raising outside capital as well, right? Like, because we weren't going to stay internal, we weren't going to stay on the books and budgets of BitGet, and what that would potentially look like. So my journey to being a founder, at least for this, I'm a multi-time founder at this point, but my journey to being a founder for this ended up playing out a little bit differently because while at Gitcoin, I was doing a lot of interesting work that put me in a position where I would actually get quite a few offers about being able to take full-time employment in other places and advisorships and angel checks and things like that. But I took this one and said, there's very, very interesting potential here as opposed to some of the other stuff. So mine was a more unique road to here. And for me was thinking about understanding what I believed it would take to create a successful blockchain and then to create what would be a sustainable, healthy blockchain ecosystem afterwards. And really looking at how having a partnership with a large centralized exchange and the actual wallet that they have and what that would do for being able to do initial distribution when TVL and users and transactions and liquidity and all of the things that are so important at the earliest stages of launching a blockchain, how that would help. And then how my experiences at Gitcoin really lended me a unique perspective on what I thought was necessary for a blockchain ecosystem to then be successful. Because we've hit that place now where many people are tired of another infrastructure project raising money and launching. And I started deeply thinking even then about, what does it actually take to build it? Right now, everyone thinks that the successful blockchain is just one that launches with a lot of hype and then has a large FDV and people get rich. And I said, that's not actually success. That's not actually sustainable. What do we need to do? And what are the pieces of the puzzle needed for a successful blockchain ecosystem? And so that was sort of the thinking that really went through my mind when I thought about whether or not I should take this opportunity.
Very interesting journey. I think I think, as they say, like, if you're going on a right path, there comes an opportunity which eventually leads to something larger. And while you were narrating the story, and as just connecting the dots, like how multiple kind of things just collated together, and it was a perfect opportunity led for you.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. It was just one where it was like it made sense to take the jump.
Amazing. Let's deep dive a bit into Morph, Azim, right? I think
Sure.
Web3 landscape has changed a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the way the consumers and the users are interacting has changed and will be changing, over a course of next few years, as we say, a lot of open regulations from different, governments across the world.
Yeah.
So at Morph, how does your tech side, get aligned towards it? I know you guys use both, ZK and optimistic, sort of things.
Right.
And how does it evolve, to the changing needs?
Yeah, totally. So when the team originally started putting together the tech, and I always profess I'm not a technical founder, so I don't actually sell anyone on the tech, but we did an optimistic ZK rollup, and the idea was to be able to do something that would be more secure than OP, but cheaper than ZK. And the idea was as blobs would get cheaper and EIP 4844, that we would overall then evolve into being a full ZK rollup at some point, which is the things that we're looking at doing actually at the moment and have been having internal conversations around. And the team built out a decentralized sequencer, completely custom. So it's not Astria or Espresso, which now are, I think, both live. I could be wrong. One of them is live, right? And potentially both. But we built out our own decentralized sequencer for reasons that we thought would be more aligned with Ethereum. And our settlement layer is the L1 on Ethereum instead of using a different DA layer that could potentially make things cheaper. But we're really concerned with being Ethereum aligned. And so now We're figuring out what changes will be made. It's a modular stack, which is beneficial because you can actually change the pieces of things as time goes on to upgrade to what makes sense. It's something where the best analogy I've been able to come with is that a modular stack is a lot like building your own gaming PC, where as different parts of your gaming PC become old, you can just replace them. You can add more RAM and you can add a new graphics card. And so the original thesis on this from the tech team was, let's build a modular stack that does this, that we can upgrade over time to sort of meet the needs of just the crypto industry as things evolve.
Got it. I mean, given that, it's a, what I could summarize, it's a no bullshit approach for any application to build on top of Morph, which gives you, on the top, decentralized all the elements from the Ethereum, and much easier and easy to plug in, sort of an elements. What is the strategy of Morph to onboard this, amazing applications, which are coming? And sub part to that question is, what is the kind of support, right? Because these are, early stage, kind of projects, that are coming
Mhm.
in. So how is,
Mhm.
Morph adopting to these scenarios, and what sort of help do you guys actually provide?
Totally. So, candidly, the thesis behind Morph and everything that I learned when I was at Gitcoin, because we had two protocols at Gitcoin that I believe they still have, Grant Stack, and there was another one at the time called Allo Protocol, Allocation Protocol, where part of my job was to speak with all of the Alt L1s and the L2s in the entirety of the crypto ecosystem, whether it was EVM or non EVM, to really understand pain points that they had in how they were going about grant distribution and ecosystem development, really. And what I learned was that many of them were running grant programs that had really nice vanity metrics of 8 and 9 figure grant programs. And what that really meant was that there was a portion of money that was sitting in a corner, and there was 1 to 2 people that were not actually experienced in capital allocation, that were overwhelmed using Google Sheets that were getting submissions, and they had no idea how to actually distribute this money. And further than that, once that grant money was distributed, there was no real further support that was given to these early stage builders. And the thesis that I sort of developed that we're using at Morph now is that when we decentralized away from the idea of building Web2 companies in San Francisco, where you moved there, you had your day job, you worked on your startup on the side, you took a bunch of coffee meetings over the course of time to try to get, angel investors or a lead investor or getting into Y Combinator. We sort of also decentralized all of the resources needed when we decentralized out Web3. And that's much more apparent with people who live in multiple parts of the globe, is that right now we're in this place where I believe that we've created grant mercenaries, where builders go to 10 separate foundations and they build the lowest quality product they can to get access to a grant for 10K, 20K, 50K, 100K. And they try to get as many of those grants as possible by just creating those like low quality things. And I think that we have sort of demonized these builders and looking at them in a way that they're doing something wrong. But from my perspective, and what I was seeing was that the incentive alignment that had been created was one that put builders in a position to do that, because those grants are just enough to build an MVP for your company. They're not enough to sustain yourself. You can't build, launch, and scale companies. You need to be able to use those initial grants to build something that will then get you access to venture capital so you can build, launch, and scale a company. And if you do venture capital correctly, you think about a token launch. And ahead of a token launch, you need to get access to KOLs. You need to get access to media for people talking about you, and all of the things you have to do to get yourself interesting to centralized exchanges. And launching a token on a centralized exchange is not a straightforward process. It requires having an understanding of relationships and politics and even cultural differences based on where the exchanges are for places all around the globe in a way that's very difficult to figure out, especially if you don't already have access to those relationships. And then let's say you even successfully get listed on one exchange, two exchanges, three exchanges, whatever it is, you need to figure out how to pick the right market maker. And the best market makers in our space are very difficult to actually just get in touch with. Never mind being able to work with them, people don't know how to get in touch with them. And so the thesis that we created at Morph was, how do we build a turnkey solution for the best builders to get access to all of the resources they need to go from ideation through execution of a successful token launch? And so if you do that, in theory, there are four main parts of a blockchain ecosystem, which would be first a blockchain, then you have builders, then you have VCs, and then you have exchanges. And if builders launch something valuable on a blockchain that then gets venture capital, and then that token launches on an exchange, there's value creation for all four pieces in that. The blockchain gets used, and there's block space used, and there's fees paid, and there's just more name recognition for that blockchain. Positive flywheel. Builder raises venture capital, and then they're able to launch on an exchange. Exchange makes money on buying and selling of token. Builder gets to be able to vest tokens over time and do work with their treasury, and the VCs get to unlock tokens that end up being more valuable than what they invested in. And so for us, so much of it is built around, how do we offer those resources selectively, of course, to a number of projects that would then allow us to create success stories, because they actually got all the resources they need. Because builders in the Morph ecosystem won't feel the need to have to go to 10 blockchains, because they'll be getting everything they need at just one blockchain.
Very fundamental things, and I think this is rightly spoken, right? Because I mean, I've been into the investing journey for like 4 years. But raising is one part, right? I mean, no matter you raise up to like 5 or 10 or something around that, but
Yeah.
I think the hard part comes on what you just said: finding the right KOLs, finding the right market makers, having that deep relation with the exchanges, and it just sucks time. And I mean, you won't believe this, but I've literally seen, few startups who have lost tons of money in, all these kind of things. So it deviated them, their runway was reduced, they had to take some, severe decisions and stuff. But it's, really phenomenal that you guys are supporting, in all these processes.
Thank you, man.
Um,
That's sort of the thesis where I'm tired of builders being relegated to sort of like secondary status, and infra providers being considered the main celebrity in all of this, when I think that that's completely backwards. I think it's the job of the infra provider to empower superstars that are building on their blockchain, not for the infra provider to be the one that has the biggest party and has the coolest merch and have the most Twitter followers and all of those things. Is that it's the other way around. And I think trying to change that as a paradigm is going to be the only way we also get real world adoption.
Got it. As we're coming, into the mid of this, Azim, would love to understand, how was the fundraising journey of Morph? And obviously, you have, mentioned, the incubation was being done at an exchange, so relatively it was much more easier and stuff. But the sub part to this is also, what would be your advice, for young developers or entrepreneurs who are just starting and raising their, initial pre-seed round, kind of things?
Man, I was very fortunate, not only because we were incubated by a larger exchange and could tell a good story from that, because the relationships were ones that I was fortunate to already have. When I was at Gitcoin, a large part of my job was raising money, and that money would then be distributed to grantees in the Ethereum ecosystem that were building interesting projects. And my work while I was there, in total, between that treasury diversification round and grants rounds and everything, like I raised somewhere between 15 and $20 million, which is a lot of money to already have experience in raising. And it put me in a position where I knew many of the VCs in the space. I had name recognition among them as a potential founder. While at Gitcoin, I did a very large deal with UNICEF's crypto fund. I did a large deal with Shell Oil. I did a large deal with the American Cancer Society. And so I was in a very fortunate position to be walking into being a founder just because of things that I had already done. But honestly, we actually we did 20 million. It was 19 million from VCs, 1 million from angels. We had almost 40 million worth of commits, though, in terms of people asking us to take their money. We raised close to what would have been in commitments of 40 million, took 20 million inside of 5 weeks, and we did it without a deck. And yes, I was in a very fortunate position. Now, the first thing I will say is timing is everything, right? The market when we started raising was January of 2024, and the market just became hot. Everyone started talking about how the bull run has already begun. Token prices were up already, and investors were looking to deploy capital. Top of the year is also traditionally, and you would know this best, when decisions are made on, for every fund, we're looking to make X amounts of deployments of capital this year, and this is the amount of money that we have to be able to do so. And January is usually when things really take off, whereas Q4, where we're at right now, there's really no investments being made. Everyone's just sort of planning for next year. And even especially within the US, you know, we were discussing our fundraise in November of last year, but when we were at Dev Connect in Turkey. But the reality was, in the US, if you haven't gotten your term sheet by, Halloween, you might as well start in January, because the US Thanksgiving holiday is a big one. Then from there's Christmas, then there's New Year's. And in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, no one's doing real work. And so the first thing I would say is sort of timing is everything, from understanding when you should be raising, and then the timing also of, like, we were in a really good position. Had we been trying to raise the same amount of money 6 months later, it would not have worked out nearly as well. There would have been way more scrutiny. Right now, for anyone listening to this, it's a very frothy market. I mean, as we're talking, Bitcoin's close to 100,000. Every token is up. I was reading just before I got on here that there's potential for a Solana spot ETF in the United States, and what that could mean to Solana prices even more, right? Everyone's talking about 1,000 for Solana. When that happens, there's always more need for a deployment. And then honestly, from there, I actually wrote a CoinDesk article, and I don't know if there's a way that we would be able to somehow send it to people, but there was an article I wrote soon after our fundraise where I really detailed what it is that founders could use to be able to raise capital. I wanted to find a way to really put my thoughts into a place, being like, hey, I'm a founder who just raised. Let me really tell you what it was that I used to be able to do this. And so much of it, to me, has to do with understanding what a venture capitalist is to begin with. And you'd be able to speak to this really well. But I think so many people look at VCs as someone who's supposed to fund their passion project, kind of a thing. They don't understand that venture capital is a business at the end of the day, and that the way venture capital works is that VCs go to investors who put a pool of money together, and then they entrust the VC to turn that money into more money, right? That's the job of a VC. And obviously, it's a more inherently risky thing, because maybe 1 out of 15 or 1 out of 20 things of a traditional VC is going to work, but that's supposed to pay back the 19 losses that occur in the process of that investment, of this pool of money that wealthier people have given and entrusted the VCs to turn into more money. And so I traditionally find that the lack of understanding of what a VC is and what a VC's job is ends up really being one of the first places that founders make mistakes. Because without having a deep understanding of what a VC is and why a VC exists, you're not going to be in the right position to be able to explain to them the story that they want to hear. And regardless of what it is that you're doing as a founder, what you want a VC to hear when they hear your pitch is, I have this idea. This is why I'm building it. This is how big of an idea it is. These are the people that I'm building it with who are also aligned in making this idea big. And here are the reasons that we're the right people to do this. And then the end of that pitch is, and here is how, based on all of that information, that we're going to be able to multiply the money you gave us into more money. And that's it, right? And so when you're putting together your pitch, if you're not able to do that, then you're in a bad position to raise from founders, from VCs to begin with as a founder. Because most people really just are like, VCs should just take a chance on me. Why don't VCs decide to just do something that may not make sense? No, not at all. because that's not the business model of a VC. But if you understand that the plain business model for them is that, then you can take any project you're doing across any industry. This doesn't just apply in crypto. It applies in biotech, it applies in B2B SaaS, is we have this idea. This is why we think this idea is important. This is how big the market for the idea that we have is. This is how we think we're going to go about being able to capture a percentage of the available market share so that your money becomes more money. This is the team that's putting this together. And this is why this team has the potential to be able to make this successful. And then from there is how far along are you in your idea? And an idea is sure valuable, but execution is way more valuable. And so, how much of your idea have you built? You have this team. Have you designed everything? Have you built anything? If you've built it, is there any actual validation from the market that this is something that is useful? And even if you have users, is anyone willing to pay for this? Because all of those things are just further adding to the idea of your pitch, where you're saying this is a valuable thing, and we're proving that it's valuable because people are not only willing to use it, they're willing to pay for it. And so I think, in the simplest terms, if more founders understood just that, they would be able to tailor ideas that they have and then tailor their pitches in a way that would make more sense. Because the thing that I've seen most as a VC, also myself, is founders aren't pitching you on why this idea is beneficial to the VC and how it will make them money. A lot of founders who are more inexperienced are just sort of talking to you about why they think this is interesting to them. But like, a VC is not interested in why this is interesting to you. A VC is interested in why this is interesting to them. And so, in the most succinct way, I would say that would be just what I would want any founder to understand ahead of putting together an idea and wanting to pitch that idea.
That was a very detailed monologue, Azim, and thanks for briefing into it. I mean, the perspective matters, but at end of everything, right? I mean, sometimes, and as what you rightly said, the common mistake that a lot of founders do is hey, this is what I'm building and listen to me, and listen. But that's not the way it is. It is exactly the opposite way, on why the VC has to get it, and what sort of returns it will make it, because at the end it's a capital. I mean, venture capital, it itself is a name into it.
Yeah. I mean, venture capital at the end of the day is an extension of a form of private equity, and it's just earlier stage private equity where you're trying to acquire as much as you can of a company that looks like it'll be valuable. And so having a basic understanding of that traditional finance goes a long way, and it's something that I think isn't properly done by most founders.
Got it. Azim, as we are coming to close of the end of the podcast, I want your, inputs. What are your, specifically seeing the market that we are in? I mean, BTC is just about to hit 100K. As per you, what would be the next, top, 2 or 3 sectors that will really shine, in this next, few quarters? And any top of your mind couple of ideas which you feel for our young developers and founders over here would be worth taking a bait on? Yeah.
I am extremely bullish on decentralized science. I think that we're in a space right now where way too many people continue to do things that are focused on speculation. And if we're going to put a real word to it, it's just gambling. And it's just unregulated gambling that is going on across the world with meme coins and so many of these things. And that's not to take anything away from the value that's added to the ecosystem because people are willing to gamble. But if we really want this industry to last, we need an industry that builds real products for real people. And if you take a little bit of a deeper dive into what's going on in decentralized science, it's quite fascinating at what is possible by taking the power away from centralized authorities in the science space to be able to then crowdsource or in a decentralized way build out many of the solutions that are needed. And if you look at some of the numbers of, like, look at a Sanofi, look at a Pfizer, look at a Tylenol, like look at how valuable these companies are. And you can see what it might look like to reverse engineer certain ideas that would be possible in decentralized science, that would be easy to understand, that there are real end users that would get real benefit and real value and create real money. I think that that's one of the things that I'm very bullish on. Obviously, I have a bias from a bio background, but that's definitely one that I think is very early still, and is one where you can network your way into all of the right circles, and that many of the most important people in this space are putting their time and efforts into. I mean, at DevCon there was CZ and Vitalik, and Vitalik was one of the big donors when we raised money for the DeSci round in 2022, and Juan Benet, who founded Protocol Labs, and Stephen George, who founded Gnosis. And if you look, Brian Armstrong is one of the founders of Research Hub. There is so much valuable stuff where all of the people who are post money, I call them, they're so rich that money doesn't matter. They're all interested in DeSci. And so if you follow the money, it makes sense to go to DeSci. Secondly, honestly, I'm so interested in all of the boring things. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the Stripe acquisition of Bridge recently, no one on the Bridge team was hyper available on crypto Twitter. They were not the ones doing the keynote talks at all of the conferences. They were quietly building away at a solution where there was very clearly inherent value that larger companies would be interested in. And I think that the Stripe acquisition of Bridge is only the start in a series of very large mergers and acquisitions that are going to take place. Because if you think about a lot of these companies, especially in finance, who have a ton of capital, that understand that crypto is inevitable, none of them are going to be able to hire adept teams when it comes to crypto. None of them. So what's going to make sense for them is going to be the same way in the early 2010s when we saw, the Facebook acquisition of Instagram turned into a frenzy of acquisitions throughout the 2010s, where so many companies were bought up, and the intent was buy the team, bring them in-house, hold the people that are there, let them vest it, and then allow them to start a practice for whatever that thing is. And so if you think about all the largest financial companies in the world, and if you're building good products that are actually valuable, a large company is just going to come and buy you. They're going to say, you need to stay here for 2 years. We're going to give you a cush roll, and we need you to build out the team for this so that you can then leave after 2 years and then go do whatever it is you want. And while everyone is so focused on like the next hot, sexy thing that, as of yesterday, TikTok meta of meme coins for Solana is the thing. 2 weeks ago, it was AI meme coins that are being run by AI agents. There's something new every month, right? Is that if you're actually thinking about the boring thing, and you might not be able to get the same Twitter traction, but if JP Morgan buys you, or if Stripe buys you, or Silicon Valley Bank buys you, you're way better off. I mean, the founders of Bridge are the ones that, we can easily say are some of the most successful, if not most successful, in this ecosystem right now. And so understanding what some of those pain points for traditional companies who may want to enter crypto, but don't actually have some of the boring things figured out. Like, one of the things I can say, no one has figured out on-chain KYC, but like a large bank cannot get into offering DeFi services to people if they don't know who's behind the wallet, right? If they don't know, like, you can't just say, here's a wallet address, we'll let them work with us. Like, if you want to open up a bank account in most places in the world, there's extensive identification that you need to be able to offer to prove that you're a real person. You're not wanted by arrest in specific jurisdictions. You're not doing illegal things with that money. We can't just let anyone be part of DeFi protocols if a large bank wants to do it. So if someone can solve on-chain KYC, every single bank would go, actually, we're way more interested in DeFi now because we need to be able to meet regulatory compliance within our country to make sure that we're not allowing terrorists or drug money launderers to use our platforms. So those are the two things, candidly, right now that I'm most excited about.
Amazing. Thanks, Azim. I think, it was really great having you here on the Onchain India podcast, sharing your thoughts on Morph's journey, your journey, and obviously the fundraising tips. That I'm pretty sure would be a lot of helpful for our young audience over here. And hopefully we see some success stories coming out. People get inspired through this, and in span of 2 to 3 quarters we see some good stuff which is being
I
built.
would love that. Would love that, man. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Awesome.